explore the unrivaled beauty and excitement of Cascadia Bay, set amidst the stunning landscapes of the Pacific Northwest. Cascadia Bay is a new Cities Skylines series. The real inspiration for the map is the area around the small town of Astoria, Oregon, but we're going to be building a large, densely packed city in a small area of land, similar to Seattle or San Francisco. We'll start by creating an iconic bridge that straddles the Columbia River, connecting Oregon and Washington. To build the bridge itself, I'm first using the Image Overlay 2 mod to align it with the location of the real-life Astoria Megler Bridge, and using this ship as a guide for a rough idea of the lowest height the bridge can be without clipping. The bridge itself ends up being a bit higher though. The bridge asset I'm using is the Akashi Kaikyo Bridge from Kobe, Japan. I'm using procedural objects to modify it to fit the highway. This is quite the monumental task and requires me to make sure both pieces are properly aligned with each other and the road. The size of these bridge pieces makes it a bit difficult to align precisely, but I did my best and got it pretty close without driving myself crazy. I recolored the bridge to a nice subtle teal color, which I think adds a nice pop without being too imposing. Afterwards, I deleted the original guide road and had to manually draw in the roadway because the asset itself isn't perfectly flat, and I had to use network anarchy and at some point set the elevation step to 1 meter, gradually raising and lowering the road as needed so that it sat nicely on top of the bridge, and then cleaned it up with Move It where necessary. The main highway in the Cascadia Bay region is US Route 101, which runs north and south along the Pacific coast, connecting San Francisco and Los Angeles in the south and the rural areas of western Washington in the north. I've aligned this highway on a ridge along the hillside because space will be tight. Traditional interchanges like partial cloverleafs won't work. We have to improvise and make some unconventional designs. The area is roughly inspired by the complex maze of off-ramps that exists as you exit off of the Bay Bridge coming from Oakland into San Francisco, where ramps curve around to fit into the available space. It may be controversial, but because of the space constraints, it'll be difficult to use conventional traffic wisdom, and perfect lane mathematics won't be entirely possible. But that's part of the challenge in building in such a space. We want to keep the flat area near the waterfront free of highways to maximize buildable land. US 101 may turn to the north and cross the bridge into Washington, but it splits off at this point and becomes US Route 30, providing freeway access to what will become the eastern part of the city. Again, because of the terrain and tight space involved, we will have to create somewhat of a spaghetti interchange, fitting on-ramps and off-ramps into whatever available space we have. You may have noticed that I have some streets already laid out. The ones east of the bridge closely follow the actual alignment of the grid pattern of the real-life city of Astoria. And on the west end of the bridge, I've created a mostly 12 unit by 12 unit grid with some visual variation here and there. Eventually, I want the city to have a bustling waterfront, so I'm preparing the area for development by creating what will eventually become piers jutting out into the river, leveling the terrain and adding key walls to define the edges, using Move It to align their heights so everything is level. We're going to start by placing this cruise ship harbor to be the focus of our future waterfront district, bringing in visitors from outside the region. I am taking more cues from San Francisco with this part of the build, using the actual ferry building asset and creating a tram line to go along the waterfront, similar to the Embarcadero. The main city of the Cascadia Bay region, like its real-life counterpart, is named Astoria. However, this Astoria is quite different from the real-life version. In this timeline, after its founding by John Jacob Astor in 1811, Astoria became a global shipping hub for the entire West Coast, with an importance equal to that of San Francisco or Seattle. Initially powered by the logging industry and fur trade, later expanding to financial services, defense contracting, and in the late 20th century, technology and manufacturing, we will explore each of these industries and more and their effect on the region in upcoming episodes. But today, we're going to begin by building out downtown Astoria and giving the city its own unique skyline. I've often always wondered why Portland became the major metropolitan hub of Oregon, while Astoria stayed small. Given its strategic location at the mouth of one of the West Coast's only navigable rivers, it would make sense that a large city would develop here. So this series is a way to explore how that might have played out. Of course, I'm sure there's many real reasons for this that I'm not aware of, but it's fun to imagine another large city along the Pacific coast with its own unique character. As you can see, I'm placing down many high-rises of varying heights, trying my best to create a skyline that looks realistic and natural, with a few larger iconic buildings tapering off into more mid-rise style buildings. Most of the buildings I'm using are custom assets, either unique buildings, high-density residential, or offices, but a lot of them come from the Skyscraper Content Creator Pack and Financial Districts DLC. The buildings themselves come from all over the United States and the rest of the world too, with a mix of stuff from New York, San Francisco, Seattle, Chicago, Portland, Pittsburgh, Vancouver, Salt Lake City, Oakland, Warsaw, and quite a few fictional buildings that just come from wherever. I want the high-rise buildings to extend all the way to the edges of the freeway, creating the effect that every inch of available land is incredibly valuable. And the freeway was created after the city grew quite a bit. Overall, I'd like to keep Astoria's urban freeway system relatively minimal, similar to Vancouver, Manhattan, or San Francisco, keeping the main urban core as walkable and transit-friendly as possible. I'm also working on detailing a few select blocks with some low-rise commercial and residential buildings. The overall feel that I'm going for is an old American city. Given Astoria is one of the oldest cities on the US West Coast, it'd likely have a similar history and development pattern to that of San Francisco, and have a mix of modern and historical buildings, feeling very much like a miniature New York or Chicago, as it would have densified at a time when those cities were building into the sky as well. I did want the city to have an iconic tower, similar to Seattle's Space Needle. So I chose the Sky Tower from Auckland, New Zealand, and put it in the hills just on the other side of the freeway. For the area across the road from the ferry building, I wanted to create a walkable plaza for residents to enjoy the waterfront district, using various assets, including the Vanilla Skate Park, which I believe was from Sunset Harbor, and different park assets from the plazas and promenades and Park Life DLCs. Again, a recurring theme in this city is taking heavy influence from San Francisco, channeling the spirit of the large walkable plaza that exists along the Embarcadero. I do want Astoria to have a strong transit network, and underground metro will be a large part of that. I'm creating one initial line with 2 stops for now, but as the city expands, it will evolve into a regional transportation system, hopefully as extensive as that of the New York City subway. I'm sort of building this downtown area a bit sporadically, coming back to the blocks where high-rises are present, and filling in the empty spaces with various low-rise residential and commercial buildings, and off-street parking in some areas. The western end of downtown is meant to feel a bit more modern and residential, with lots of condos of various sizes and shapes filling in the irregular street network. I'm doing some light detailing in certain places just to liven up the odd-shaped spaces a bit. Overall, this is just the beginning of the city, so a lot of areas may be subject to change. Although the main city is named after the real-life counterpart of Astoria, many of the surrounding areas I've planned for the Cascadia Bay region are going to be entirely fictional. And the name Cascadia Bay is fictional as well, based on the name of the Cascadia region, which typically refers to the Pacific Northwest as a whole, and a proposed new nation, whose borders vary depending on who you ask, but it typically includes all of Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia, as well as parts of Northern California and Southwest Alaska. Mostly, I thought it was a catchy-sounding, YouTube-friendly name that communicates the idea that the city is sort of a mixture between the Pacific Northwest and the San Francisco Bay Area. I designed the map for this build specifically for this series, and you can find the link to it in the description. If you're interested in seeing my process for designing the map and learn how you can make your own maps based on real-world locations, watch this video, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of Cascadia Bay.